Hey there, welcome to the DFS build. I am Kevin Roberts, ready to go over this likely last game of the 2024 NBA Finals. The Mavs are in an 0-3 hole, and it's not looking good. They just cannot keep up with the Celtics. They can't stop them inside. They can't stop them outside. I mean, last game, Boston was able to pull away and win with Porzingis not even there. So it's not looking good at all. It is a little weird that Luka Doncic fouled out at home in such a crucial game where the Mavs were in the game. They were rallying. They came back. They're only down by 3. And then all of a sudden he fouls out on a pretty subjective call. I thought it was an offensive foul on Jaylen Brown, but whatever the case, the Celtics hit 17 of 35? What was it? Something crazy like that. 17 of 46 threes. They are just launching threes in this series, and it's working out because number one, they have a lot of guys who can hit threes, and the more shots you put up, the more likely you're going to hit some. And shooting 37% on 46 shots, I guess that'll do the trick. Dallas, meanwhile, only attempted 25 in the last game, and they hit 9, so 36%, not far behind Boston. But apparently the name of the game in this series right now is just pure volume from outside, and Boston is being more aggressive, and they are just flat out moving the ball better. That's not a shock for a team that was just so dominant during the regular season and just, has continued that dominance, if not kind of been a little bit of a sleeping giant throughout the entire playoffs, to the point where they just really haven't been challenged. And have they been challenged yet in this series? Kind of, not really. I don't know. Obviously, game 1 was a cakewalk. Game 2, Dallas gave them a little bit of a fight early and then fell apart. And then game 3, Dallas controlled early, got completely just destroyed in the third quarter. And then, to their credit, did bounce back before Luka fouled out, and then they kind of caved at the end there. But once again, what happened on that last major sequence that turned a 3-point game into a 6-point game with 2 minutes left? Boston just kept swinging the ball and moving it pass, no dribbles. And that's the exact opposite of what you're seeing out of the Dallas offense. A lot of isolation, a lot of dribbles from individual players, not enough of that ball movement to keep the defense's head turning. So long-winded way of saying Boston is definitely the better team. It's not a surprise they're up 3-0. I fully expect them to complete the sweep. I do think it's fun to think of that narrative can Luka, build this amazing legacy, come into his first NBA Finals and lead the first ever 4-3 comeback? That'd be amazing. I just don't think it's going to happen. So let's get to it for DFS Showdown style here. If anything I say helps you out, please give this video a like and also consider subscribing to the channel. Obviously, I think this is going to be the last NBA Showdown slate of the year. So it's going to be sad to say goodbye to NBA DFS, but in a real way, maybe not, because NBA Showdowns, every other day aren't really the same thing. I prefer, something like a 5 to 8 game slate. That's kind of my sweet spot. Doing showdowns, it's a little bit unpredictable, or should I say very unpredictable. It's fun to try to, pick or be overweight on certain plays, but at the end of the day, it needs to break just right for you to hit. And it's just not really, it's not really that likely on a consistent basis. But beyond NBA, we're still going to be pushing out MLB videos whenever we can. And then as the NFL season comes in, I'm going to be doing some Dynasty and season-long fantasy football content. So if you're interested in that, definitely subscribe to the channel. And then obviously when the NFL season comes back and NBA next year, we'll be doing daily/weekly videos for that too. All right, let's get into it without wasting any more time. Let's just go over these guys in general, and then I'll talk a little bit about my captain strategy. Right now, there's no captain ownership number, so it doesn't really pay to get that into it. So I'm just going to look at it at an overall perspective. So up top, I don't need to give you a sales pitch on Luka and Tatum, so I'm not going to spend any time on them at all. It seems like a waste. They both look awesome. They both will be fairly owned as captains, probably the 2 highest owned captains on the board, and as they should. Luka's at home. He's been really good. He did fall out in the last game. A game before that, he had 72 fantasy points. You can definitely get away with not playing Luka just because the game could blow out. Boston's good defensively. He's had a couple of games where he's just kind of okay, but obviously he has a massive ceiling. So the way I've been playing it, throughout the playoffs when it comes to Luka has been sliding him over utility and trying to win with him at utility and not spending all those funds at captain. I have no problem continuing with that strategy. Blowout risk, or not. I think that's a good move. Tatum, I'm actually a lot more interested in captain than Luka because I feel like this is possibly a statement game for him. Right now, if you end after 3 games, you know who the NBA Finals MVP is going to be? Almost certainly going to be Jaylen Brown. He's been the most consistent, high-level player for Boston so far in this series. He's had 21 plus real points in every game. He had a 30-point game in Game 3. I mean, he was a huge reason why they ended up pulling away and won that game. He had 53 fantasy points. He's been super, super efficient as a scorer. He's had 7 plus assists in the last 2 games. He's been hitting the rebounds. He's been getting blocks and steals. Dude is all over the place. And another guy who looks really in play would be Drew Holiday, just because he had that huge game in Game 2 at 26 real points, and he's just been a monster on the defensive end, giving Luka and Kyrie fits in a lot of these games. So I think if Tatum comes out here and drops like a 40 burger, then the narrative shifts, and all of a sudden Tatum in his second NBA Finals, he would have his first shot at a NBA Finals MVP trophy. So he did score 31 points last game, so obviously that puts him back in play. And the game before, he did have 12 assists, which put him 1 rebound away from a triple-double. So I think if the voters go back and look at those 2 games, they'll say, yeah, he had quite the impact. And then worst case, the Game 1 where he only had 16 points, he's still the double-double in a blowout where he wasn't even really needed. So in the first 3 games, you could still argue Tatum is in play. But this dude has an ego. We know that. So in a huge Game 4, it would not shock me at all if he just took over and just you could feed into that narrative and just drive it home with Tatum in the captain slot. If you don't want to bite onto that, there's nothing wrong with that. You can slide him over to utility. I've been playing Tatum and Luka together in utility a ton this series. That strategy itself has not burned me at all. What's burned me is playing guys like Maxi Kleber, not playing guys like Drew Holiday or Al Horford when they're going off, and playing Derek Lively when he's just playing horribly, not playing Porzingis when he's limited in his first game back. Stupid stuff like that has been burning me personally. It's probably been impacting other people too. But not captaining Luka and Tatum has not really been a problem. I think in that Game 2 when Luka had 72 fantasy points, maybe somewhat, but I mean, I had him captain enough that I wasn't really worried. But like I say all the time, if I'm doing like a single entry, I'm probably going to slide them over and then try to hit on a guy I really, really like to get a low-owned captain play to make my lineup different from the top up or from the top down. If I'm doing a bunch of lineups, I'm still getting captain exposure to those 2 guys because they have the best floor and ceiling combo of the entire slate. It just is what it is. So I said I wasn't going to spend much time on those guys, but here I am still talking about them. But they look great. There's nothing wrong with them in captain. I love them there if I'm doing a lot of lineups, but I'm probably going to slide them over and pair them together a good amount of the time. But between the 2, the price discrepancy favors Tatum, and I think the narrative favors Tatum too. Jaylen Brown, like I said, right there with Tatum, if you want to look at narratives and just like the series ending right now, Jaylen Brown has been awesome. I see no reason why he wouldn't continue to be awesome. He's getting it done across the board. Even when he's not blowing up as a scorer, he's getting the peripherals, blocks, steals, rebounds, assists. He's doing everything, hitting threes. So he looks like a good play across the board. He's a bit pricey in utility at 10K flat, but he seems to be worth it at the moment. So I don't have a real issue with that. I think I prefer him at captain just because I think he'll be a little bit less owned compared to Tatum and Luka and possibly Kyrie. Right now, if you look at just the straight up ownership, he is the 3rd most owned guy. But I wouldn't be shocked at all if he's less owned than Kyrie in the captain slot. So, I said I wasn't going to confide in Kyrie Irving going into last game. And I said, of course, then he's going to hit like every shot and go off. And he did. He had 35 real points, 4 threes, 13 makes overall. But yet only 42 fantasy points, which was another thing I said. I said, yeah, sure, he might go off, but he doesn't do anything else other than score in this offense. So even if he scores 30 plus points, is he actually going to be worth it? I don't know. So I'm sure if you had Kyrie, you did just fine. and I did have a little bit of him anyways, just to hedge my bets a little bit there, which is just annoying that once you get off a guy, he just pops off like that. But he's fine. There's nothing wrong with playing Kyrie. He'll probably be the third or fourth highest owned captain play. So he remains in play. Obviously, he feels a little bit more comfortable at home. He's coming off of a big game. He's too talented. He was too talented to play like he was in game 1 and 2 for much longer. No doubt about it. I definitely I'm with that logic for sure. So in an elimination game at home, I can totally see Kyrie panning out and being a solid play. I have no problem with him at all. I just think if he's going to be owned, I would pivot over to Jaylen Brown or just flat out ignore him and build a different way. Just because if he does hit a bunch of shots, what else is he going to do? Is he really going to break the slate? I doubt it. He'd need to score like 50 real points to truly break the slate, in my opinion. But yeah, it's decent and solid play. Nothing wrong with him. I just don't. Once again, I don't really personally want to prioritize him. I feel like Derek White is the better play. You save a bunch of money with Derek White, and the projection does not drop by much. The ownership dips by 7%. Derek White is coming off a decent game, 33 fantasy points. He's had 33 plus fantasy points in 4 of his last 5 games. 27 plus fantasy points in every game in this series. So he's been a little bit quiet compared to the other guys like Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, Drew Holiday had a huge game. So in a clinching game, I wouldn't be that shocked to see Derek White come in and pop off and just hit a bunch of threes. I mean, they are just putting up volume against this Dallas defense outside of the perimeter. So Derek White is definitely part of that. He can get peripherals too. I mean, the dude's getting blocks, Derek White. So yeah, I mean, Derek White definitely is a guy who can get blocks if you go back and look at the season, and steals too. He had 3 steals in game 2, so he's certainly capable of doing that. But my play here would be more like I just think he can get hot from outside here and end up contributing quite a bit, especially if Porzingis is out again. If Porzingis is out again, Derek White looks really, really good at 7.4K in the utility, and I do want a sprinkling of him in the captain slot just because these clinching games can really go crazy. I remember one year the Miami Heat clinched the finals and Mike Miller came out and hit like 8 threes or something crazy. So stuff like that always happens in these clinching games. So you want to look for guys like that. Not that Derek White is a Mike Miller. I mean, if you want to go that route, you're actually looking more like Peyton Pritchard or Sam Hauser probably, but we'll get to them in a little bit. Anyways, Derek White looks really good. I think he's a comparable projecting play to Kyrie, and I just think he's a better points per dollar play in this showdown slate for sure. Also, Drew Holiday, it's basically the same projection, basically the same ownership. I think he's still a very good play at 6.8K. It's just if he's going to be chalky, and if he's going to be chalkier than White, I prefer White. I can't imagine that it sticks the way it is, where it's just at 41 and 42% with that ownership, just because Derek White $600 more. And, the general belief has been that Drew has been, on fire, when last game he wasn't even that good at 24 fantasy points. He plays the entire game. He does have the ball in his hands quite a bit. And hypothetically, if Porzingis is out, his usage would increase again. I'm sick of telling you not to play Drew Holiday because it often blows up in my face. Last time it worked out in my favor. I did not have a lot of Drew Holiday. He only had 24 fantasy points. I went to Derek White instead. He had 33, so there's a 9-point fantasy edge, with Derek White over Drew. So it worked out. I'm going to keep doing it. If Drew Holiday is going to be 40+% or whatever, I'm just going to keep going Derek White instead of him, or just go in a different area. One other way we can go is PJ Washington, who, by the way, continues to play pretty well. I'm going to say the same thing over and over. And it's not necessarily working out with this specific play. So if you don't want to play PJ, don't play PJ. But here's the reality. He's played 36 plus minutes in each of his last 5 games. And in all those games, he has had 21 plus fantasy points. And in 4 of those last 5 games, he's had 27 plus fantasy points, or 25 plus fantasy points. That doesn't sound amazing, but he's only 6.2K on a showdown slate. And he's actually been doing well. He's had double-figure scoring in each of his last 5 games. He's had 5 plus rebounds in each of those games. If the guy can just actually pop off with some peripherals, he's going to get there and crush, and be a key piece to a winning lineup. So once again, I do like him in the captain slot. I feel like I've said every time I've done a showdown slate with the Mavs, but he's exhibited a ceiling. He is the third scoring option. If Luka or Kyrie are cold in this game, PJ could still get hot. Dallas needs to shoot more threes. PJ is part of that. He's hit 3 of 6 threes last game. They just need to put up more three volume and hit their shots to compete with Boston flat out. If they actually look at it and look at how they need to try to measure up with the Celtics, they would make that adjustment and be a little bit more aggressive offensively. So if they do that, PJ Washington should be a part of it. And he's so close to getting a double-double. If he can get that double-double, a little bit extra upside, I think he can get there at 6.2K. Really rock solid utility play, and I do once again like him in the captain slot. He's not going to be owned in the captain slot whatsoever. He's coming in with 37% utility ownership. Yeah, nobody's going to be playing him. Al Horford at 5.8K looks really good. He's comparable to PJ Washington. In theory, he's the better play if Porzingis is out. I'm not nearly as interested in if Porzingis is in. If Porzingis is out, Horford is a really good utility play and a great captain try, especially with, the dude's ancient. This is possibly, you never know, it's possibly his last game. He's like 38 years old. And the clinching game to win his first championship. So it's certainly possible that he goes off here. Like I said, Mike Miller syndrome. So at 5.8K, really good final utility spot. Really interesting captain play if Porzingis is out. If Porzingis is in, I'm just a little less interested in him across the board, but he's not completely out of play. He's still going to play a good amount, especially because Porzingis was limited anyways. And since he missed the last game, we can trust him even less than we would want to, right? I had spoken about Derek Lively bouncing back. I think I said it before game 2, and then he had 9 fantasy points. So it did take Porzingis being out to allow that to happen. He did get a double-double last game with 34 fantasy points. 30 minutes is what I really was excited to see. So if we can hope for that kind of run, we should feel pretty darn good about Derek Lively at 5.4K. I don't think he benefits from that matchup with Porzingis off the bench. So if Porzingis is in, I'm going to be a little hesitant to go with Lively, but I think the price and what he did in the last game are, reason for optimism. He does have a pretty good projection, so he's certainly a leverage play on either Al Horford or PJ Washington if you don't want to eat the chalk up there. Although, is it really chalky when you're talking about 33 and 37% ownership? Not really. But Lively's an okay captain play. I don't mind him at captain. If he's going to get in there, get a double-double and play 30 minutes, he's definitely in play for a captain spot, and he's really cheap. So he looks solid, but I do prefer him at utility. Gafford at 4.4K. His minutes dropped down to 16 last game. He's just been all over the place in this series, so he's going to be tough to trust. Obviously, we know he can be super efficient as a scorer inside. He can clean the glass. He can get blocks. If we can get to a block party with Gafford in 16 and 20 minutes, I think he'd be fine. And the price has come down enough at 4.4K that we can entertain it. But the minutes are wonky. At this point, Lively is just the safer play. That said, if Gafford's going to be only 25% owned, I do think I will get him a decent amount in the utility slot. Yeah, I don't see why not. I mean, the minutes are not easy to trust, but it is what it is. Yeah, Derrick Jones Jr. is another one too. I think his price has come down to 4K. We only played 16 minutes last game because Tim Hardaway Jr.'s corpse came out of nowhere to play like 19 minutes. I mean, I guess he got a little bit more minutes with, Luka being out and stuff. But man, Tim Hardaway Jr. really for no reason. He didn't even play in what was the first game or second game? He didn't even play. Okay, it was the second game. He didn't even play. He was out of the rotation completely. In game 1, he played 8 minutes and played all. And then even before Luka was fouled out, Tim Hardaway was playing over these other dudes. It's just gross. Josh Green had 22 minutes as well. And Derrick Jones Jr. and Daniel Gafford saw their minutes dip. So obviously Gafford lost his minutes to Lively, and Derrick Jones Jr. lost his minutes to THJ and Josh Green, and obviously Luka falling out played into that a little bit too. Maxi Kleber at 2.2K, in theory, was going to be a good value in this series, but he has not turned up. He's not showing up at all. Very, very disappointing. So much about his profile looked good for the series. They needed his size. They needed his shooting. He's capable of rebounding, blocking shots, and he's topped out at 5 fantasy points. That's his best game out of his 3 appearances in this series. Just absolutely disgusting. So right now, if you look at the Dallas value, I mean, Gafford at 4.4K looks still viable just because we know he has a ceiling and he's a really good per minute guy. Derrick Jones Jr. at 4K, Can't trust him now. 16 minutes in a crucial game 3 at home, and suddenly losing minutes to Tim Hardaway Jr. I don't know what to do with that. So I think at 4K flat, he's still viable if he's going to play 15 to 20 minutes, but doesn't feel good. He's not exactly the best per minute guy in the first place. So not excited about that. Josh Green, I guess if he's going to play 20 minutes at 3K flat, he's in play, a little bit more in play than he had been. I think Jaden Hardy is completely out of the rotation. Let me see if I can find him in here. He's just, they probably took him out because it's completely out of the rotation. No. All right, so 2K flat. Yeah, he did play in the last game. He had big 4 minutes with negative 0.5 fantasy points. So he's off my radar completely. Dante Exum played 3 minutes after playing 10 minutes the game before. So it's like you can't trust anything. In theory, I still like Kleba at 2.2K, but the minutes and production have just been absolutely dog shit. So I can't trust that at all. I just don't like to get to the point where we're like, oh, Tim Hardaway Jr. played 19 minutes. Let's go plug Tim Hardaway Jr. in as a chalky 2.4K play. It just feels really stupid. The good news is right now he's not chalky at all. 2% owned. I don't know if that's going to hold. Kleba's carrying ownership. Josh Green is carrying ownership. Derrick Jones Jr. 28%. So if Derrick Jones Jr. is going to be 28% owned, I don't mind going away from that and taking a shot on Josh Green, who's like going to be about half the ownership, and then maybe even get a dusting of Tim Hardaway and Kleba. But Lord knows I do not feel great about it. I actually kind of like the Boston value a little bit better if Porzingis is out. If Porzingis is out, Sam Hauser at 3.2 looks awesome. He only played 14 minutes in the last game, but he's had 10 plus minutes in every game in the series, and he has not been hesitant to shoot the ball. He had 3 or 4 threes in the last game, and like I said, these game clinchers can be a little bit wonky, so I would not be shocked for him to come out and hit a bunch of shots again. The minutes are not super reliable, but without Porzingis, I do think he's totally viable at that price. Peyton Pritchard, not getting enough burn for me to really take seriously here. The only other guys would be Xavier Tillman, who did play 11 minutes and he had 12 fantasy points, but he had 1 3 and then just got a couple other stats. I don't know if I really trust him at 2.6K, but if Porzingis is out, he should be in your player pool for punts for sure. Luke Cornett was a guy that I thought would have a shot at getting some minutes with Porzingis out, but he did not play at all in the last game. So that's probably going to do it for me for the value. For a quick recap, love Luka and Tatum. I'm probably sliding them over to utility for the most part, prioritizing Tatum as at captain between the two for the most part. I didn't really talk about Porzingis. If Porzingis is in, I think he's an okay try at a captain a little bit. At 8K for utility, it feels a little bit steep for a guy who's limited and like just missed a game due to injury. And obviously the game could get out of control because these series clincher games just tend to do that. So I think a sprinkling in captain, not super excited to play him in the utility. A lot of these other guys just look fine, and I'm just kind of look at updated ownership and play. Look to leverage them a little bit where I can, where it makes sense. Like, for instance, if Drew Holiday ends up being a good amount higher owned than Derek White, that's an easy call for me. It's a call I've been making. I don't want to eat Drew Holiday chalk, and Derek White is a comparable play. He's $600 more, which should push his ownership down. And he's as good, if not better, of a play for DFS than Drew Holiday is. Al Horford is a lock for me if Porzingis is out. A lock, a borderline lock for utility, and a guy I'm going to get to quite a bit for at the captain slot. On the Dallas side, I don't really want to eat Kyrie Irving chalk. He's not getting there even when he's going off. So I think I'm just going to take a stand there, and I'm just not really that interested in Kyrie Irving. He's a good play in a vacuum because he does have a ceiling and he has a huge role behind Luka, but he defers to Luka a lot, and he's not been dealing with this matchup very well in 2 out of 3 games. PJ Washington continues to just get crazy burn. He's the third option for Dallas. I think he's a really interesting captain option and a rock solid utility play. And Derek Lively at 5.4K looks like another really rock solid utility play with sprinkling a captain for him too. All right, that is going to do it for me. I would monitor that Porzingis news. That is going to change things a decent amount. Obviously, it opens up the value quite a bit for a guy like Sam Hauser. And then we should even be entertaining Xavier Tillman if Porzingis is out too. If Porzingis is in, the usage gets diluted a little bit, and Porzingis is a little bit interesting for captain. All right, so hopefully that breakdown points out some values, helps point out the top plays of the slate, and also who I'm looking at personally for the captain slot. Before you're done, make sure you run your lineup optimizer. I'm looking at the Roto Grinders projections here. And that's what I'm using. But whatever you do, just make sure you are playing with ownership a little bit to make sure you're getting those lineups different. And I wish you luck, and hopefully we can get a big win for the last game of the NBA Finals. Or maybe Dallas can keep it going, and we can keep pushing out some videos and keep having some fun. But either way, I appreciate everybody who's watched all NBA season, and hopefully I've helped you guys win a little bit, or at least nudge you in the right direction. If I do help you, please give this video a like and also consider subscribing to the channel. Thanks for watching and good luck.